Stay tuned. Coming up, we discuss how staffing issues can impact situational awareness. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 373. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gassaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs there for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. All right, let's jump into our feature segment as we discuss how staffing issues can impact situational awareness. Challenges to a decision-maker's situational awareness from issues related to staffing were among the most significant findings of my research. I can make this bold statement for several reasons. First, from the multiple card sort exercise I did, 43% of the cards selected by commanders were issues related to staffing. Second, when I evaluated the existing studies on the barriers that challenge situational awareness, in no other high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment were decision-makers impacted more than by staffing-related issues. Stated another way, it would be inconceivable that a commercial airline would fly with just one pilot or a surgical team would undertake an operation without an anesthesiologist. In such cases, the decision-maker is under stress, and clearly their decisions could result in life and death consequences. But there's one key difference as it relates to staffing. If these decision makers were understaffed, they would not engage. In other words, a short-staffed flight would be canceled, or an understaffed surgery would be delayed. Decision makers ranked situational awareness issues related to staffing highest during the multiple card sort exercise in my research. Among them were included understaffing, unpredictable staffing, response time delays as it relates to staffing, and lack of experience of the first responders they were supervising. While these issues can impact strategy and tactical perspectives as well, remember the focus of this discussion is on decision-making and situational awareness, so we will keep that narrowly focused on that objective. Decision makers shared that while they were responding to a call and upon arrival of the scene, part of their size-up consideration related to staffing issues, both quantity and quality of staffing. How long they think it's going to take to get the right staffing to the scene, and how to manage the incident under the right quantity and quality of staffing when it does arrive. The intense focus on staffing was no surprise. Emergency scene operations are often very labor-intensive. It takes multiple teams of 4 or 5 well-trained and experienced responders to accomplish a variety of complex and dangerous tasks, often simultaneously. It is a commonly taught best practice for the first arriving decision maker to conduct a size-up. The size-up is what helps the decision maker develop situational awareness. In review of previous discussions on how situational awareness is developed and maintained, first decision makers must capture clues and cues about what's happening in the environment around them. Secondly, they must comprehend or understand those clues and cues into meaning something. And finally, the decision maker has to make reasonable predictions about future events. The size-up should also include an evaluation of the available staffing. For example, the decision maker might give consideration to the number of personnel responding to the call, how long it's going to take for those responders to arrive on the scene, and what training and expertise level those responders will have. These are the clues and cues to sizing up staffing As you evaluate your staffing, you comprehend all the information into meaning something. And that something is figuring out whether you have enough resources at the scene to safely do the work that needs to be done. Then, consistent with the highest level of situational awareness development, the decision maker constructs predictions about future events based on what they think their personnel can get done within a given time frame, with consideration for the complexity and speed at which the incident conditions are changing. For example, at a structure fire, there's a finite amount of time to which responders can safely get the job done via interior operations. At some point, a building that is on fire will deteriorate to the condition that makes it no longer safe for firefighters to be inside, or the smoke and fire condition will become so intense that the interior environment will no longer be compatible with life, regardless of how much protective gear someone is wearing. Arriving decision makers conduct a size-up that includes an assessment of on-scene and, as best they can, responding personnel. This may be easier for a career department who has fixed staffing levels, and the decision maker knows which responders are on duty and assigned to which vehicles at the start of the shift. Under these conditions, the decision maker can process those clues and cues about staffing well in advance of the incident and make plans on how to avoid compromising safety if a company is short-staffed or there are crew members that lack training or experience. In volunteer or paid-on-call departments, where members respond from home to staff apparatus, the challenges of incorporating a staffing assessment into the size-up process can be very challenging. Even if the officer on the apparatus announces on the radio how many crew members are responding on that particular apparatus, the decision maker has no way of knowing the training and experience level of the crew members without actually knowing each and every crew member who makes up the crew on that apparatus. Consequently, under staffing challenges, a decision maker, because they cannot develop level 1 or the beginning part of situational awareness about staffing when critical clues and cues are missing, like quantity and quality of the responding crews. Following the proper sequence of situational awareness development, it stands to reason a decision maker who lacks critical clues and cues cannot have their situational awareness progress to level 2, which is understanding or comprehending the clues and cues into meaning something. In other words, the decision maker will be challenged to develop a quality action plan without a thorough understanding of their staffing. Following this through to the final developmental level of situational awareness, level 3, the decision maker will then struggle to understand how effective the crews are going to be on achieving the strategic objectives or the tactical priorities because of the flaws in their level 1 situational awareness. This example demonstrates nicely that situational awareness is a 3-step process, and to be effective, there can be no shortcuts. Now, with all the information gathered in the formation of an action plan, the decision maker can make certain assumptions about the quantity and quality of staffing levels in advance of their arrival. However, assuming a crew is capable of doing more than they realistically can accomplish, or assuming the crew will be good enough to accomplish a task faster than is realistic, is going to result in flawed level 3 situational awareness, being able to make accurate predictions about future events. Overconfidence by a decision maker about a crew's ability may cause the commander to over-assign tasks to personnel, thus giving crews multiple assignments and expecting all the tasks will be accomplished in an unrealistic time frame. Under the stress and excitement of an emergency, this is an easy trap to fall into because the decision maker knows all the things that need to be done and tasks get assigned to the personnel who are present without consideration to the quantity or quality or abilities of those crews. Another challenge caused by staffing issues can occur when a decision maker arrives on scene, conducts a size up, figures out what's going on and where the incident is going, and makes an action plan before the right number of responders are present to perform their assignments. Commanders reported in my study that they have arrived on scene, conducted a good size up, made a good plan, but could not execute the plan properly because the right staffing had not yet arrived. And unfortunately, some of these decision makers admitted that when the right quantity and quality of staffing did finally arrive, the decision maker gave orders to execute an action plan that was formed when the decision maker first arrived, sometimes 5 or more minutes earlier. And consideration was not given to how the rapidly changing conditions should have changed the plan. In other words, the decision maker executed a stale, dated plan. The clues and cues had changed. What was happening at the moment the staffing arrives was different. And what was going to happen in the future was also different. Executing a plan based on old information is a dangerous decision. Yet the decision makers failed to realize the potential consequences of their actions. Clearly, the decision makers weren't doing this on purpose. They gathered the information they needed, made assumptions to fill in the blanks, what was missing, and then developed and confidently executed their action plans. A good command practice would be to arrive and formulate situational awareness that includes a prediction of how the fire is going to progress and how much the incident may deteriorate in the time it's going to take to realistically assemble the right amount of staffing. Then, as the staffing arrives, the decision maker could reassess the conditions and see if the predictions about where the incident would progress before the staffing arrived was accurate or not. As we will discuss later, this type of time lapse, continual size up, has to be conducted with a conscious understanding of the passage of time. In other words, the decision maker must pay attention to how much time is passing, in other words, seconds or minutes, as the incident intensifies. This helps the decision maker develop more realistic projections of how quickly future events are going to unfold. If a decision maker arrives and makes a plan and fails to revisit the plan as staffing arrives, there's a risk the assignments will set the responders up for failure because the current conditions and deterioration of the incident has already progressed beyond what is safe for the responders. If the decision maker stays true to an outdated action plan, changes in conditions may be overlooked. Staffing can challenge a decision maker's situational awareness in other ways as well. When crews arrive on the scene of an emergency, there's a reasonable expectation that some action is going to be taken. Depending on the culture of the organization, the decision maker may be challenged by crew members who expect to take aggressive action even when the decision maker knows the conditions are not conducive to be aggressive. Now here's a note. Organizational culture is a separate barrier to decision making and situational awareness that I will discuss in another episode. Decision makers can also be challenged when the response times for emergencies are delayed. When a decision maker is on the scene of an emergency and waiting for the arrival of tactical personnel, it can be very stressful. This delay can cause a decision maker to become frustrated or even angry because they're action-oriented leaders and they can't make a plan. Additionally, if a decision maker arrives before adequate staffing, they may conduct a size up and develop an action plan. If the delays are substantial, the decision maker may conduct another size up and revise the action plan. After conducting several size-ups and making several action plans, then maybe the crew arrives. The multiple size-ups and multiple action plans can cause confusion in the mind of the decision maker. Some of the facts, or clues and cues, may start to get jumbled up in the decision maker's mind, leading to confusion about what information was part of the first size-up versus the second or the third. Another way staffing can challenge a decision maker's situational awareness comes from issues related to the quality of staffing. For example, a decision maker responding to an emergency may formulate a mental model of what is happening at the scene based on the information that is being provided by dispatch and the decision maker's existing knowledge from a pre-incident plan. The decision maker arrives and conducts a comprehensive size-up and knows what needs to be done. One aspect of the size-up should be an assessment of the quality of the personnel. As the crews arrive, the decision maker assesses the training and experience levels of each crew member. It's not enough that the decision maker knows the crew is 3 or 4 or 5 members, because the competency of the crew is based as much, if not more, on the quality of the crew, not just the quantity of the crew. I'm confident there are decision makers who are going to listen to this episode who've been in this situation where the majority of the crew that arrives are inexperienced or undertrained. And that forced the decision maker into a judgment call on whether to engage in dangerous operations or remain in a safer defensive posture until better trained and more experienced firefighters arrived. The decision makers who assess the crews and make judgment calls about assignments with consideration for crew safety are demonstrating strong situational awareness. Through no fault of their own, the decision maker was dealt a proverbial bad hand of cards. If there's one thing I've learned about gambling, it's you don't bet large sums of money, in other words, take big risks, when you have bad cards. Sure, you can try to bluff your opponent, but in cards your opponent is another human who is also trying to assess your motives and outthink you. Fire, on the other hand, doesn't care if you have a strong hand or a weak hand. It's going to burn indiscriminately. Your first defense is a strong offense. If you don't have a strong offense, don't engage in high-risk operations. Decision makers I've interviewed have admitted that there have been many times when they arrived, and despite the fact that they assessed their crew and realized the crew lacked training and experience, the decision makers still engaged the crew in high-risk operations. This impacts the decision maker's situational awareness because their attention is going to become narrowly focused on the safety of the crew they just put at risk. In the process of having their focus narrowed, the decision maker can become oblivious to all the other things happening in their environment. Critical clues and cues can be missed because the decision maker's hypervigilance to the crews who are operating in the environment they arguably should not be in. The decision maker realizes the dice are being rolled, and the stress created by this is intense. The decision maker is no longer in control, as in the situation once the dice leaves the hands of the roller, the gambler is no longer in control. This is a dangerous situation to be in because these crews are at risk right from the start of the operation, and they need a decision maker who is looking out for their safety. Part of looking out for the safety of the crew means maintaining a big picture view of the incident and being ever aware of the changing conditions. Stress from taking excessive risk can narrow the attention of the decision maker and impact their situational awareness. Some decision makers I've interviewed have also admitted to going operational, in other words, hands-on, when it was determined that a crew lacked sufficient training or experience. In this situation, decision makers admit it was a judgment call made to help improve the safety of the crew. As noble as that justification may appear, such judgments are flawed and can actually increase the risk to personnel. When the decision maker goes operational, there's no longer anyone commanding the incident. If given the two previous scenarios were the only options, which generally they're not, having a decision maker in a location where they can see the big picture while being fixated on the safety of an inexperienced crew and missing the big picture clues and cues is better than having no one in charge who can see the big picture. Imagine a commercial airline pilot flying a trip without a flight attendant, and once reaching the cruising altitude, left the flight deck to serve the passengers the drinks and snacks. If you were on this flight, I'm reasonably confident that you would want the pilot to stay on the flight deck and fly the plane, where that pilot could see the instruments and look out the window and see other planes and mountains. I suspect some decision makers who listen to this episode are thinking to themselves, I would never engage in high-risk operations with undertrained or inexperienced personnel. To that I say congratulations. I've not read one casualty report about a responder hurt or killed in the line of duty following a decision to not engage in high-risk operations because of the quality or quantity of the crew. So why would decision makers do that? Why would they engage in high-risk, high-consequence operations when they don't have enough personnel, or the personnel they do have lack training and experience to do the job safely? We'll explore the answers to those questions in some other episodes. I want to pause here for a moment to share something else that I learned when I was evaluating the findings of my research. Staffing as a barrier to situational awareness may be a finding that is unique to public safety personnel. This may be somewhat unqualified statement because I admit that I have not evaluated every study conducted on situational awareness and all other high-risk, high-consequence work domains. But what I can say with authority is I have read hundreds of them. These studies were used to form the foundation of my research in situational awareness in public safety domains. I evaluated the barriers that impact fighter and commercial airline pilots, surgical and emergency room teams, air traffic controllers, submarine commanders, and many others who work in stressful environments similar to public safety. In evaluating all those studies, issues related to staffing and understaffing and delays in the arrival of adequate staffing and undertrained and inexperienced personnel were never mentioned. Lots of other potential barriers were, like distractions and interruptions and poor communications and information overload, but staffing was never identified. I found this interesting. Why had this never been identified and discussed? I conducted another literature review. Maybe I had missed something. I found no other study in high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environments where staffing was a barrier to decision-makers' situational awareness. Thus, I concluded the impacts of staffing on situational awareness of a decision-maker may be a unique finding to public safety. I realize there are other professions and circumstances where decision-maker situational awareness may be impacted from staffing issues. However, to my knowledge, they have never been a topic of research. I also think the impact of staffing issues cause public safety decision makers may be particularly challenging because of the speed at which decision makers must formulate and maintain their situational awareness under high degrees of stress. For the moment, this remains a unique finding from my research. I challenge other researchers who may listen to this episode or read my book to pick up this issue and advance our understanding of staffing impact on situational awareness by applying the findings of other high-risk, high-consequence domains. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some amazing opportunities to present my programs on a virtual platform to groups ranging in size from 6 to 400, and recorded playbacks have been viewed over 28,000 times. Here's hoping that the vaccination reduces the number of cases and we return back to some form of normalcy. I'd like to thank the organizations that have hosted some live situational awareness programs recently, including the Kansas State Firefighters Association, the Hilltop Hose Company, hosted at the Allegheny County Public Safety Training Center, and Henkels and McCoy Corporation for hosting me to do a program for electrical lineman foremen. Here's the training we have upcoming. On May 25, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series. This program will feature Peggy Young talking about Strength Finders. On May 26th, I'll be presenting a situational awareness program for the Utah Fire Chiefs Association in Salt Lake City, Utah. On June 3rd, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series again. This program will feature firefighter health and wellness experts from MinFire Initiative, talking about cardiac health, cancer, and mental health. On June 8 and 9, I'll be presenting 2 programs for the Fire Chiefs Association of British Columbia Annual Conference. On June 14 to 16, I'll be presenting 3 situational awareness, safety, and leadership programs for the Clark County Fire Protection District Number 6 in Vancouver, Washington. On July 19 through 21, I'll be presenting situational awareness programs for the Spring Fire Department in Spring, Texas. On July 28 through 30, I'll be presenting training for failure at Fire Rescue International in Charlotte, North Carolina. And on August 2 through 5, I'll be presenting situational awareness programs for the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. This is the 5th program I've delivered for shipyards for the United States Navy from Maine to Hawaii, and I'm very appreciative for those opportunities. Thank you to the organizations that have allowed me to offer your members virtual training, and a special thanks to the agencies who postponed their programs in 2020 and now have patiently waited to get your programs rescheduled in 2021. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program or a live event, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SAMatters.com homepage, and I will give you a call. Finally, remember to check our show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 373 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gassaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.